Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 82 in the book of Genesis. Today we're going to watch Sarai, who's going to be Sarah, Abram, and Hagar all do bad things. Three people doing three bad things. And one of them is going to be asked to do the hardest of things, which is probably, I think, going to influence the other ones to do the right thing. It's all about entrusting when it's hard. And frankly, today we're going to see three bad examples in these people. We're going to see impatience. We're going to see abdication of responsibility and leadership. We're going to see jealousy. We're going to see blame. We're going to see everybody doing something wrong. We're going to see people doing stuff wrong with their nakedness. We're going to see people doing wrong with their marriage. We're going to see especially people do stuff wrong with their actions and their attitude and dealing harsh. We're going to see upside down family dynamics. So why study this? First of all, is to learn what kind of people we are, and then what kind of God we are, and how he asks us to act differently. So what a fun story. This is from Genesis chapter 16. This is going to start in verse 4. And he, Abram, went into Hagar, and she conceived. So they had sex. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. So this is Hagar looking with contempt on Sarai. Verse 5. And Sarai said to Abraham, May the wrong done to me be on you. So she takes that blame, and now she's putting it on Abram. I gave my servant to your embrace. Not a pretty way of saying that. I gave my servant to your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with me on contempt. So may the Lord judge between you and me. But Abraham said to Sarai, Behold, your servant is in your power. Do with her as you please. So Abraham kind of abdicates the family responsibility here. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her. Then Sarai does bad things. And she fled from her. Okay, verse 7. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur, S-H-U-R. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? Great questions. And she said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are pregnant, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. So just because it's a relative, and let's say your spouse has a bad idea, it doesn't mean that you have to do it. So this idea that Sarai should offer Hagar to Abram to make this new multiple generation thing that the Lord has promised to Abram, that is an error. And so let's talk about polygamy just for a second. So this is not God's design. We find that out in Genesis chapter 2, all the way through the Bible, especially in the New Testament. And guess what? Because of the power of sexual union, having sex outside your marriage is going to adversely complicate things. So I think this story is actually an argument against polygamy, not an argument for it. And Abraham says to Sarai, Hagar is in your power. Well, wait a minute. What about Abram's power? No, you have the leadership. So Abraham is kind of abdicating his, helping his spouse through difficult decisions. He says to her, do to her as you please, as opposed to do to her as you would have the Lord, as the Lord would have you do this. So Abraham messes up here. The good news is, and we'll talk a lot about this, I hope, tomorrow, where God remembers Hagar, the Lord listens, and the Lord always has some difficult stuff for people. So what the Lord is saying here, I think of people that go to church every Sunday because they learn two things. Number one, you're not okay. You're not God. You owe God worship and sacrifice and gifts. And you're not okay in your character and you need work. And that's kind of what happens in today's passage. For Hagar, the key issue is submission. It's a huge theme of the Bible. If you're a child, if you're a woman, if you're a wife, if you're a worker, if you're a citizen, if you're a church member, or if you're a man. Basically, it's everybody's issue, and specifically today, it's her issue. So, what is that? Submission is the voluntary relational attachment under a designated person who's acting in a designated role that demonstrates by word and in action imperishable internal adornment before God. So it is something that shows in relational practice what's true in spiritual reality. And it never works unless you get the spiritual component right. So what the angel says to Hagar is go back and submit. And it's the hardest thing in the world. And ironically, in chapter 3 of 1 Peter, this is what Sarai is praised for. So she wasn't like this before. When in the New Testament, Sarai ends up that this is the one thing that's specifically praised about her. So how did she get it and how did she learn it? I think it's by Hagar. 1 Peter chapter 3, but let your adorning be in the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. This is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are his children if you do good and don't fear anything that is frightening. So what we find here is Hagar adorning herself in submission. So this passage has so many wonderful things. Do you have anybody in authority that you're doing things wrong with? Do you treat them with contempt or kindness? So let's try kindness. Do you know where you're going? Are you blaming and having anger? Are you involved in a sexual situation that you shouldn't be? Are you noting that it's a powerful and it's going to compromise your judgment as it does for this little love triangle? And then the big passage today, I think, talks about returning and submitting, two super hard things. Why? It's the biggest of big deals for this person, Hagar, who then comes back, shows Sarai how to do this. It becomes one of Sarai's great attributes. And then she's known for it in the New Testament as an example to all of us. So I think by what happens today's passage, by Hagar coming back and learning this from the Lord, doing it in her household, being an example to Sarai, now we have this as an example for everybody. Thanks for listening.